Chapter 1. Shirai Doya is a man of letters. After graduating from university 8 years ago, he drifted through 2 or 3 rural middle schools. He drifted back to Tokyo last spring just like that. Flowing is a term used for wandering door-to-door performers, and drifting freely can be taken to mean living unbound by traditional dogmas. Whether this description of Doya's situation is fitting or not, even the author himself can't say for sure. A tangled mess of thread, the moment you fix your eyes on one loose end, reveals itself as nothing more than a single, simple strand. But behind even a single, straightforward course of action, there may be layer upon layer of reasons all tangled up together. Even the wild geese flying north and the swallows coming south. If you could see things from their perspective, they'd each have a perfectly good reason for doing what they do. His first teaching post was somewhere out in Echigo. Echigo is famous for its oil fields. About 4 or 5 blocks from the school, there was a large oil company. More than 2/3 of the town's prosperity, the town where the school sits, is kept alive thanks to this company. For the townspeople, that oil company was worth far more to them than any number of middle schools. Corporate executives are considered gentlemen simply because they have money. Middle school teachers look second-rate simply because they're poor. When a lowly teacher like that goes up against a wealthy gentleman, it's obvious to anyone who's going to come out on top. At one speaking event, Doya took the stage under the title Power of Wealth versus Character, and he explained why the two don't necessarily go hand in hand, subtly calling out the arrogance of the company's board members. Young people today drift along without any real convictions, blindly worshiping the almighty dollar. He cautioned against moral decline. The school board called him an arrogant, uppity troublemaker. The local paper wrote him off as an incompetent teacher spouting pompous complaints. Even his own colleagues thought he was a fool for stirring up trouble and putting the school's reputation at risk. The principal explained the relationship between the town and the company, and urged Doya that stirring up trouble where there was none was simply not a wise move. Even the students who had once pinned their hopes on Doya started parroting their parents and calling him a fool of a teacher who didn't know his place. Doya drifted away from Echigo without a second thought. His next stop was Kyushu. Strip away the northern industrial belt and cut Kyushu off from the rest, and you're left with a blank slate. If you haven't breathed in the black smoke of a coal mine, you can't call yourself a real person. Poking his pale face out above a threadbare, greasy suit jacket, going on about how society is this way, the world is that way. The unproductive ramblings of those who can't even be converted into a single copper coin's worth of value for the nation's future. Do they even have the right to exist? There's no way that could be. Letting those without rights exist at all is an act of charity on the part of the business class. The scraps of paper bills that trickle in each month, barely keeping alive those scholars who do nothing but talk, or those teachers who are little more than human phonographs. Where does it all come from? Clap your hands once and wealth beyond counting rains down on you, and they let you lick up the very last scraps of it. The ones who keep that spirit alive, that's what scholars are for, writers are for, and yes, teachers too. Living off the power of money while bad-mouthing it is no different from cursing out the very parents who brought you into this world. If you look down on the businessmen who actually make that money, then go ahead and starve to death. When they threw him out, telling him to go ahead and die if he could, or surrender if he couldn't go through with it, and just like that, Doya drifted away from Kyushu. The third place Doya found himself was a rural town somewhere in the Chugoku region. The mood there wasn't nearly as fierce when it came to worshiping money. The locals just throw their weight around something fierce, calling anyone from out of the prefecture a foreigner. Calling them foreigners is one thing, but they go out of their way, pulling strings in every direction, trying to bring these foreigners under their control. If there's a banquet, they mock him at the banquet. If there's a speech, they take jabs at him during the speech, and then they pile on the insults in the newspaper. He lets the students mock him, and for no reason at all. The only thing that bothers him is that people from other provinces never quite blend in with him. Blending in is, without a doubt, what holds a society together. A French scholar by the name of Tarde even went so far as to say that society is nothing but imitation. Assimilation might well be something truly important. Even Doya understood just how important that was. It wasn't just a matter of understanding. He had received a higher education and developed a broad view of society. He believed in the power of fitting in even more than the average person. The only question is whether you assimilate upward toward something higher or downward toward something lower. Just blindly going along with it without ever questioning it does no good for the world. And as far as I'm concerned, it's a matter of personal integrity. One day, the former feudal lord came to visit the school. He was a daimyo, a member of the nobility, and as far as the locals were concerned, he might as well have been a god. When this god wandered into Doya's classroom, Doya paid him no mind and just kept on with the lesson. God, of course, never said a word back. And from there, things got a whole lot more complicated. The classroom is a sacred place. A teacher standing at the podium to instruct students is like a samurai suiting up in full armor before heading into battle. Doya's position was clear. No matter how high and mighty you were, whether you were a Kazoku aristocrat or a former domain lord, you had absolutely no right to interrupt a class in progress. For standing by this belief, Doya once again packed up and drifted away from his post without a second thought. When he left, the locals apparently shook their heads and called him a stubborn fool. Doya, branded a stubborn fool, walked away with a breezy indifference, those mocking words at his back. Doya drifted away from the middle school for the third time, then drifted back to Tokyo, and there he stayed, showing no sign of moving on again. Tokyo is the most cutthroat place in all of Japan. Even with a salary that would let you live comfortably back in the countryside, you still can't make ends meet. Let alone giving up teaching altogether and just sitting on his hands doing nothing. There's really no other way to describe it than a technique for turning yourself into a mummy while still standing upright. Doya has a wife named Sai. And when you have a wife, the obligation to provide for her comes right along with it. He could accept turning into a mummy himself, but he couldn't very well let his wife shrivel up and starve. Long before things got completely dry, his wife was already unhappy. When he first left Echigo, he told his wife the whole story from beginning to end. At that, his wife said, "Of course, dear," and got right to work, bustling about to get the luggage ready. When he left Kyushu, he told them the whole story too. She just said not again, and didn't open her mouth after that. The words his wife spoke when they left Nakakuni were, "Someone as stubborn as you will never settle in anywhere," she said in that preachy tone of hers. It had shifted into a greeting. Over 7 years, he drifted from place to place 3 times, and with each move, his wife gradually grew more and more distant from him. Was his wife pulling away from him because of his wandering ways, or because he had given up his salary? What if every time you drifted from place to place, your salary went up with each move? His wife probably still muttered something like, "A man like you," under her breath, full of complaint. Even if he became a doctoral graduate and transferred to a university professorship, would that same "a man like you" keep following him around? We won't know what his wife thinks until we actually ask her. All just to earn a doctorate, to become a professor, to let an empty name ring out emptily across the world. If that echo were to thunder through his wife's heart and suddenly change how she treated her husband, then she could hardly be called someone who truly knew him. A wife who measures her husband's worth by how the world treats him day to day, shifting her opinion of him morning and evening, is when it comes to truly valuing her husband. He's just an ordinary man, no different from anyone else. Before they were married, before he even knew her name, she was no different from the person she'd always been. Which means, from her husband's point of view, she was a complete stranger. If a woman's understanding of her husband is no different before and after marriage, at least in this one respect, she doesn't come across as much of a wife. The world is full of wives like her, wives who don't act the least bit like wives. Does Doya see his own wife, Sai, as cut from the same cloth? When he realized that not only was he unwelcome everywhere he turned, but even his own wife, the one person who shared his daily life, didn't understand him, he must be feeling terribly lonely. He said the world was full of wives just like her, and yet, with wives like that filling every household, they all managed to get along just fine. A man who's doing well in life has no need to dissect his wife's inner world to this degree. It's precisely because you come down with a skin disease that studying the skin becomes necessary. Peering through a microscope at filthy things when you're not even sick. It's like stirring up trouble for no reason, swinging a manure ladle around when everything was perfectly fine. But the moment this streak of good fortune suddenly flips and sends a man tumbling headlong into the depths of fate, even the happiest couples have their rough patches. The bond between parent and child snaps just like that. And you realize that what was beautiful was nothing more than a thin layer of skin stretched over blood. How much Doya noticed, nobody could say. It wasn't that Doya left for the third time because he wanted to put himself in a desperate situation, and it certainly wasn't to burden his innocent wife with hardship. The world simply had no place for him, and that was all there was to it. If the world won't accept you, why not ask why you refuse to meet it halfway? The moment Doya tries to fit in with the world, he simply ceases to exist. Doya is confident that he stands above the common crowd when it comes to character. The higher you stand above the common crowd, the greater your responsibility to reach down and lift others up with you. Knowing full well what's right, yet still choosing the lower path, even after years of education you've received yourself, it's like burying treasure under the floorboards. Treasure that education worked so hard to produce. If your character doesn't reach out and touch others, then all that effort you put into building it up amounts to nothing. No different from before you ever started. All the effort he'd poured into building it up would have gone to waste. He had taught English, taught history, and at times even ethics. All of it accumulated alongside the cultivation of his character. He taught them the art. If the whole point of studying were just to master that skill, then all you'd need to do is crack open a book in the classroom. Being satisfied with opening books and eating your fill is no different from a tightrope walker crossing the rope and eating. It's no different in principle from a plate spinner spinning plates to earn a living. Scholarship isn't some kind of tightrope walking or plate spinning. Learning a skill is beside the point. The whole purpose is to build yourself into a complete human being. Those who can tell big from small, who understand the difference between heavy and light, who know clearly what they like and what they don't, who grasp where good ends and evil begins, who can distinguish the wise from the foolish. The goal is to produce a man of integrity, one who can judge truth from falsehood and right from wrong without ever going astray. This is how Doya sees it. So just as he felt no shame in selling his art to make ends meet, he believed deeply that straying from the foundational principles of scholarship was nothing short of base and contemptible. The reason he's unwelcome everywhere he goes is that his choices and his conduct are rooted in a deep, genuine commitment to scholarship itself. As far as he could tell, looking honestly into himself, he had nothing to feel guilty about, and it never once crossed his mind that he might be a coward. Words like thick-skulled and blockhead, he'd just let them sit in the palm of his hand and hold them up to the summer sun on the south veranda. Even with a magnifying glass, I can't make heads or tails of it. Having become a teacher 3 times and been driven out 3 times, every time he gets kicked out, he figures he's accomplished something even greater than the professor himself. A doctorate is impressive, sure, but when you get down to it, it's just a title you earn for a particular skill. It's not all that different from some rich man donating money for a warship and getting himself a junior 5th-rank court title in return. The reason Doya was driven out is precisely because his character was too good for them. The righteous man is the most precious of all God's creations, so said a poet from the West. Those who hold to the way are more precious than the gods themselves. That was the phrase Doya repeated silently in his heart each time he was driven out, though his wife had never once heard these words from Doya's lips. And even if she had, she probably wouldn't have understood them. It's precisely because she doesn't understand that she's already fed up with her husband, even before they've gone hungry. Doya wasn't so heartless that he couldn't feel sorry for his discontented wife, Sai. The only thing that sets him apart from the average husband is that he refuses to bend his path just to win his wife's approval. The world simply calls him a man. Marry someone, and you become a husband. Befriend someone, and you become a friend. Take someone by the hand, and you become an older brother. Let them take yours, and you become a younger one. Out in the world, he's a pioneer, Step inside a schoolhouse and he's a teacher, no question. But strip all that away, and he's simply a person. If the world were simple enough to be summed up just by the people in it, life would be easy. His wife lived comfortably in exactly that kind of simple world. In his wife's world, there was no Doya the scholar, no Doya the man of conviction, only Doya the husband. Doya, who holds firm to his principles and stands against the ways of the world, has it even worse. The reason my husband keeps making a bad name for himself wherever he goes and ends up quitting every job he takes, he has even come to see it as nothing more than a drunken whim of his own making. Having made the trip to Tokyo 3 times on a whim, Doya declared he was done with the countryside for good. He told his wife straight out that he was done with teaching for good. Fed up with the school, he had come to realize that if he wanted to fix the sorry state of society he'd grown fed up with, the pen was the only weapon worth wielding. Up until now, no matter where he ended up or what kind of work he took on, he believed that as long as he himself stayed straight, anything crooked would snap on its own like a dry hemp stalk. Fame isn't what I'm after. Prestige isn't what I want either. My only aim is to open the eyes of the young, the ones who will shape the nation's future, and awaken in them a drive to better themselves through nothing but the power of my own character. He was utterly convinced that simply setting a fine personal example of sound judgment and discernment in his own life was enough. He spent over 6 years living exactly as he believed he should, and failed spectacularly. They say there are no demons in this world if you just keep moving forward, so compassion naturally flows from what is right and true. He jumped to the conclusion that if he could just get himself to a place where reason and logic were truly valued, then this time, yes, this time, and for someone as inexperienced as I was, what lay in wait was the mistake of a lifetime. The world isn't nearly as refined or discerning as I'd like to think. Sympathy is nothing more than a shadow that follows only the strong and the wealthy. He'd overestimated the world, thinking it was further along than it really was, and in one leap he'd gone off to the countryside. It's like trying to rush and build a sturdy house on ground that hasn't been leveled first. No sooner does he start building than those troublemakers, wind and rain, come along and tear it all down. Until you either level the ground beneath you or drive away the rain and wind, you can't truly settle into this world in peace. Making a turbulent world livable, that's the work of a true scholar. When you've got no money and no power, the only way to do something truly worthy in this world is to pick up a pen. He had to rely on the help of his tongue. He'd have to squeeze his brain dry just to wring out a single drop of wisdom for someone else's sake. The mind runs dry, the tongue wears raw, and no matter how many pens you break. But if the world just won't listen, then that's all there is to it. But even the greatest minds in the land can't work on an empty stomach. Sure, he himself might be able to get by without eating, but there was no way his wife would put up with going hungry. A husband who can't provide well for his wife is, in her eyes, a criminal of the highest order. It was this past spring when he left the countryside and arrived at a cheap inn in Shiba Koto Hiracho. This is the kind of conversation that took place between Doya and his wife. So you're leaving teaching then? What exactly are you planning to do with yourself after that? Nothing specific in mind, really, but, things will work out somehow. Somehow things will work out eventually, you say? That's about as solid as grabbing at clouds, isn't it? Well, I guess so. It's not exactly clear to me either. You can't afford to be that laid back about it, Well, it's fine for you because you're a man, but can't you try to put yourself in my shoes for once, just a little bit, please? So that's why I've made up my mind. I'm done with the countryside and I'm done with teaching. You can decide whatever you like, but if you can't actually collect a salary, what's the point? Even if you can't pull in a salary, as long as you're pulling in money, that's fine, right? As long as I'm pulling in money, well, sure, that'd be just fine. Fine then. Fine, but can you actually get the money, dear? Yeah, I think we can probably get it away from him. How? Still working that out. You can't just arrive somewhere and immediately have a plan ready. That's exactly why I'm worried. Just deciding you're going to stay in Tokyo doesn't mean much if it's nothing more than a decision, does it? You worry way too much, honestly. It's a real problem. Of course I worry. Everywhere you go, you can't get along with people, and then you end up quitting. If I'm a worrier, then you're quite the hothead yourself. Maybe so. But my temper, well, never mind about that. I'll figure out some way to make a living in Tokyo. What if you went to your brother's place and asked him for help? How does that sound? Yeah, that could work, I suppose. My brother isn't the type to go out of his way for anyone, honestly. Oh, that's exactly the problem, you know, deciding everything on your own like that. You were so kind to me just yesterday, giving me all that advice, weren't you? Yesterday, you say? Yesterday I said some things that, well, came across as rather nosy. I said them, but... Is that wrong of me to say? It's not that I'm against it. Saying so is all well and good, but it doesn't really amount to much, does it? Why not? Why? You'll figure it out soon enough? Well then, why don't you reach out to some of your friends and start working on it starting tomorrow? Friends? I don't really have any friends to speak of. All my old classmates have gone their separate ways. But take Mr. Adachi, who sends you a New Year's card every single year. He's doing wonderfully for himself in Tokyo. Aren't you doing exactly that? Adachi, huh? Yeah, he's a university professor. See, that's exactly why people don't like you. Always holding yourself so high and mighty like that. A university professor, huh? Wouldn't it be great if you became a university teacher? You think so? Then maybe I'll go to Adachi's place and ask for help. But as long as we can get the money, we don't necessarily have to go to Adachi's. Oh, you're still going on about that? You are incredibly stubborn, you know. Yeah, I am. Incredibly stubborn.